Hello, welcome. Right, so yeah, a bit more on sound design. So what I'm going to kind of go through is sort of give you that little musical start. I'm going to kind of show you how I made this sound. Okay, so it's obviously got a shut up. It's got a lot of movement, a lot of stuff going on in there, quite dirty and so on. And the main kind of point behind this video is to talk about oscillator sync and how I used oscillator sync on that sound. So yes, oscillator sync, it's something, to be honest, I've not really used a lot. I think a lot of people sort of overlook it, and I was messing about with it on the Deluge and realised it's actually pretty cool. So I'll try and explain a little bit about what oscillator sync is first. I'm going to turn this down for a sec. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of read a little sort of definition of oscillator sync. So we're looking specifically at hard sync. There are other types of sync. There's soft sync and hard sync. Nothing to do with a hard Brexit or a soft Brexit. I'm not going to get all political Brexity because that's a load of nonsense. So hard sync is the most sort of common one. So hard sync is achieved when one oscillator, called the master oscillator, which in this case is oscillator 1, is sort of plugged into the input of the second oscillator, which is oscillator 2. So on the Deluge, basically oscillator 2 syncs to oscillator 1. So what happens is when the slave's frequency, so in other words, when the frequency of oscillator 1 is set slower than the master frequency, what happens is the slave is forced to repeat before it finishes a complete cycle. And on the other hand, if we do it the other way around, when a slave is tuned faster to a higher frequency, it will kind of repeat partway through the cycle. And this kind of adds, creates new unique waveforms and adds rich harmonics and stuff, which then we can use to sort of filter out and carve away sounds and so on. Probably makes a little bit more sense if I draw you one of my now infamous pictures in the old notebook. So here we go. So if we'd have, let's say we've got a sawtooth wave, okay? So it's gonna, the cycle of the sawtooth is gonna kind of go like that. Okay, so this is oscillator 1. If we have oscillator 2, now let's say that was sort of pitched up an octave, say for now. Not an octave, just pitched up a little bit. So what's going to happen with that is that's going to kind of go like that. Okay, it's going to be a faster sort of waveform. And they will kind of run independently of each other if they're not synced together. Now, as I understand it, the Deluge only has one sync option, which I'm guessing is a hard sync. So if we do the same thing, if we have the sync turned on, let's draw my oscillator 1 again. Okay, so this is sort of the end of the or the beginning of the oscillator cycle here. So if we've got on, so that's oscillator 1. If we've got oscillator 2 sort of pitched up a little bit, what will happen is the cycle would normally go like this. Okay, so it would go up and finish just before there. And if that started again and then overlapped over here, what's going to happen is when it gets to there, it's going to reset. Okay, instead of going all the way up to the top again like that. Okay, so it's going to go up like that. There's our next sort of reset point. Okay, so we get this new waveform that's sort of all nicely synchronized with, hopefully you can see that, with oscillator 1, rather than running independently. It resets it each time. So you can see it resets before the end of its cycle. Obviously, if it was tuned down, what would happen is normally that would kind of, this line would go up there like that. Partway into that, it would reset. So it would give us, again, a different waveform. So that's how we can kind of create new waveforms using the oscillator sync. Hopefully that makes sense. In a visual way with my awesome drawing abilities, which are not awesome at all. So I thought just kind of, I was messing about with this earlier, kind of came up with this sound, which I've now turned down. So I'll sort of recreate it and show you a little bit of what you can do with oscillator sync, and then you can go away and do what you want with it. So let's start with a completely new synth. So let's just sort of demonstrate a little bit about what happens when we have our oscillators synced. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn down oscillator 1. Okay, so we're not going to hear anything at the moment. I'm going to turn oscillator 2 up full. Okay, so we just listened to oscillator 2. Now, obviously, if I transpose up oscillator 2, we're going to hear the pitch going up and down. This is with the oscillator sync turned off. If I transpose up and down oscillator 1, obviously nothing's going to happen because we've got nothing happening on oscillator 1 at the moment. Now, if I turn the sync on, what I'm going to actually do, because I've got the 3.1 overlay on this. A few people have asked me where'd you get the white overlay thing from. Obviously, it's from Synthstrom, because I've had my Deluge for a while now, so my layout is kind of out of date. So I brought this magnetic overlay. The position of the oscillator sync and stuff is a little bit different on the 3.0. I'm assuming this is going to be kind of future-proofing a bit for new stuff that's coming up with the wavetable and so on. Because on the new layout, noise is here and oscillator sync is here, which actually, if you go on those, let's come back out of those. Okay, those two don't do anything at the moment. If I just peel this off, we'll go back to the original. Woo, it's black now. Okay, they are on the next buttons down, so noise and oscillator sync is still here because there's no wavetable or anything happening yet. If we click on, so there is our noise and there is our oscillator sync, which at the moment is set to off. So if I turn it on, okay, and now take the pitch up and down on the second oscillator, you will hear this happens. Okay, so it's not now pitching up and down, it's adding harmonics because it's creating this new waveform based on my little drawing that I did earlier. Okay, so straight away we've got like a new little sort of sound source that we can use. I'm going to fiddle about that with the filter in a minute. Now, if I go to the transpose on oscillator 1, it will now start to transpose it up and down because this is synced to oscillator 1, okay, whereas previously it didn't do anything. Now, once it gets above an octave, we kind of lose anything because obviously it's kind of squishing it down to something we can't hear. So just be aware of that. If I take, let's just take the oscillator sync off again. If we bring in oscillator 1, okay, what you'll find is as you kind of keep pressing the key, with both of them playing together, we get slight shifts in oscillators and so on because they're not kind of re-triggering at exactly the same time. So we kind of get this effect with both of them turned up at the same time. If we sync them, they're both going to be all nice and neat together. So there's oscillator sync off, turn it on. Okay, we're going to get the same sound all the way through. So that's kind of like the first couple of things to bear in mind. So a cool thing is that, like I say, if we go to the transpose of oscillator 2, which is our slave, okay, a cool kind of thing you can get to get a really nice sort of analog 80s Gary Newman-esque kind of sound is if we patch that into envelope 2. And I'm not going to go too far with it, but what you'll hear is, as I bring envelope 2 in, and I've not changed any of the settings on the envelope 2 yet, we get this nice kind of scream. So straight away, instant coolness, right? Without using the filter or anything. Let's put a bit of release on it. Okay, some fatness coming out of that. Obviously, you can experiment with the amount of the that you sort of patch the envelope in, because that's quite high. Okay, and obviously you can do different things with it. Let's mess about with the sustain level of envelope 2, because that's going to take it. What we could do is kind of put the sustain, we could patch that into, let's patch that into LFO1, why not? Let's see what happens. Okay. So this is just now LFO1 controlling the sustain level of envelope 2. And then we can obviously mess about with the LFO. Try some different shapes. And so on. Okay, I mean, I could go on all day. So, I mean, it kind of shows you how powerful the internal synth is in the Deluge. You know, I think when I first got the Deluge, I thought the internal synth was a bit meh. But once you dig into it, I mean, it's bloody brilliant. I mean, I know if you've watched any of my other videos, you know how much I think the Deluge is amazing anyway. And I just keep finding new stuff. And it just keeps getting better and better the whole time. So let's just go into that patch I sort of started off the thing with. So let me just get rid of that patching I just did. In fact, no, I'll start from scratch. It's going to be the easiest thing. So let's just load in a new synth. We're going to just keep with the square wave. So we're going to have oscillator 1 at 50, oscillator 2 at 50. Oh, is that new? No, it's not, sorry. Start again. There we go. Oscillator 1, 50, oscillator 2 at 50. And we're going to leave them tuned at the same for now. Envelope 1, let's just on the amp envelope, we're going to have 0 attack. We're going to leave it pretty much as it is. We're just going to add in some release to taste, around about 30. So all the magic kind of happens in envelope 2, which is going to modulate to the transpose of oscillator 2, which is our slave, which I've not turned on. So I've got to make sure I turn oscillator sync on. Okay. So we're going to take the transpose of oscillator 2 and we're going to patch that into envelope 2. And we're going to turn that up fairly high for now. We're going to take up to about 40. That's kind of like the amount of that envelope that will do. So it's giving us the sort of the scream effect. Attack I'm going to leave at 20. Decay 20. I'm going to leave those as they are for now. Sustain I'm going to take. I'm going to leave that where it is as well actually. But release I'm going to turn the release pretty much all the way up. All right. What we'll then do is also we'll patch the LFO into the same transpose on oscillator 2. So we'll do LFO 1 as we're not using the other one. And we're going to actually have this synchronized. So we're going to synchronize to a 4th. And oh, hang on, I've not patched in, I've not dialed in anything on the where are we? LFO 2. So we're going to, once we've patched that to the transpose again of oscillator 1, we're going to take that up to about 20. Okay, so we've got envelope 1 and LFO 1 are now modulating the transpose of oscillator 2. And to get that kind of almost like a delay effect, we're going to change the LFO shape to a square. Okay, so we get that, and obviously we can dial more or less in on the LFO as we desire. Now you see if you go too high, you kind of lose it. So. Okay, and then to add like a little bit of dirt to it, we're going to put noise on. We'll bring a little bit of noise in. About 18, and then we're going to add a little bit of saturation. Only a tiny bit. Bit crush it to 12. And a bit of decimation. Stick a bit of reverb on. And there we have a little bit of an example of what you can do with your oscillator sync. Hopefully that'll kind of inspire you to try a little bit of that. So again, like I said earlier, it's just another way of adding some harmonics, extra harmonics and different things to your sound, and it's just a case of experimenting and seeing where it takes you. And then not all synths have oscillator sync. Obviously, if it's, you've got to have two oscillators to have to be able to synchronize them. But if yours has that, or if you've got a Deluge, then hopefully that was of interest to you, and it will enable you to go and make some more crazy awesome sounds. So if you've got any suggestions for any other videos or comments on this one, stick them in the box below. Usual sort of things, yeah. Like, subscribe, share the videos around, and I will try and do a video on the ring modulation as well at some stage to get some more stuff on the awesomeness that is the inbuilt synth on the Deluge. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.